As chief mechanic, Jack Clary played a vital role, leading the team of over 30 specialist engineers that kept the squadron's 12 Bristol fighters in the air. Jack and his men worked in all weathers and would frequently toil through the night to prepare the planes for their next mission. Based only a few miles behind the front line, dogfights were a common sight and air attacks a constant danger. While stationed at Bertongle in northern France, Jack Clary's squadron was subjected to a devastating German raid.
On the night of 25th August 1918, the Germans raided Bertongle, and it was very nasty indeed, something like 200 casualties. It would have been for him and for the other people involved, it undoubtedly was a really violent, frightening, terrifying experience. And he lived through that. The squadron was effectively wiped out in terms of machines and in terms of aircrew. They had to withdraw from the front line and re-equip, and they were back in 2 days. They were back in the front line. Your grandfather would have contributed to that achievement.
Would he, for sure?
Yeah.
The only picture I had of my grandfather was literally a picture, you know, a couple of sepia photographs. And seeing the plane and having it explained exactly how grueling his working life was at that time, and how he must have been constantly in a state of fear, really. Well, I would have been. It's just so hard to imagine seeing your friends go off and not come back and so on. You do feel the need to touch things that he might have touched. I know a bit about the horror of World War I, but I've never placed anyone I knew or felt anything for in that situation. I feel I'm demystifying him. Yeah, bringing him to life.
At the end of the war, Jack Clary got a job as a skilled pipe turner at Dunhills. In 1925, he married Victoria Tiedemann, Julian's grandmother, and the couple had 2 children, Doreen and Peter, Julian's father.
The next stage of my grandfather's life, there's something was amiss. He was ill, I believe, and I'd like to be told about that. It's been mentioned several times, but not dwelt on that he was ill.
Well, I don't remember much of it, other than I know, I've been told later, he had a bad accident and he injured his left-hand thumb at work.
Right.
It turned septic and they had terrible trouble saving his hand and his thumb. But he suffered badly after his periods in hospital, when he finally was physically better. Mentally, I think, I'm assuming he had a sort of kind of mental breakdown.
This is at what age? After you were born?
Oh yes, he had the accident when I was 3, so it was between about 3 and 6, 2 or 3 years is a period. I vaguely remember him being in hospital. I can certainly remember going to visit him in a mental hospital at Knapsfield or Knapsford. I remember that.
Oh, he was that ill that he was hospitalised?
I mean, they used to do that with people in those days. They had these big mental hospitals, and he was in there for a long time.
I was a bit shocked. I mean, that I hadn't never been mentioned before. Maybe there was some stigma towards mental illness at that time, and that's why it's been kept quiet. I've had my moments of being depressed, and I know what it feels like, and I'm trying to think what it was like for him in the 1930s. But you do wonder if you're feeling your feelings are the same as those of a blood relative, in that, you know, you're experiencing the same sort of very black despair that you don't think you can find a way out of. On this day and age, you get a nice packet of Prozac. You don't get locked away, fortunately. Now I know where my grandfather was locked away, effectively, Knapsbury Hospital. I thought I'd go and have a look at it. I feel a bit like I'm going to visit a sick relative. I have put a nice shirt on for him. But, I don't know what I expect. I imagine it was quite primitive, and I'm imagining there was no real need for him to be there. I imagine that it was, you know, hiding away people who weren't quite right rather than actually treating them, but I don't know any of that. I might be mixing up the 1930s with the 1850s. Well, it doesn't look too scarily Victorian. Obviously now being turned into luxury flat.
Julian's meeting Marjorie Wallace, chairwoman of SANE and an expert on mental health. He wants to know what sort of treatment Jack would have received.
Marjorie.
Hello, Julian.
Hello. How are you?
I'm all right.
This is Knapsbury Hospital that was?
Yes.
Okay. This is where my grandfather was from 19...
I've got the certificate if you like
Oh,
to.
have you?
Right. This is when he was admitted. This is a hospital record.
Oh, wow.
So it says date of admission, 12th of August, 1936, and date of departure, April the 6th, 1938. So he was here during that period of time.
He was here a while.
Yes, but look what's really interesting. He was here not as a certified patient, like most of the other people that would have been here. He was here as a voluntary patient.
Right.
So he wanted to come here. He could have discharged himself at any time. And there were very, very few voluntary patients. You see, it was only in 1930, the Mental Treatment Act, that people were allowed to be voluntary patients.
Attitudes towards mental health had changed following the First World War. Knapsbury Hospital had been used to treat soldiers suffering from shell shock. The devastating impact of this condition on thousands of men had forced a re-examination of the treatment of the mentally ill. By the time Jack arrived at Knapsbury in 1936, voluntary admission, outpatient clinics, and relatively progressive techniques had all been introduced.
They didn't actually have psychotherapy then, as we know it. I mean, there wasn't much in the way of counselling. That started much later, but there was a sort of social programme, and they just started the idea of occupational therapy. And they started introducing things like metalwork, and they would have a whole programme of events. So they felt that a person's day had to be structured, which is what they don't do now with many mentally ill people. They would have been able to go out into the grounds, those people who are voluntary, like him. And it was considered that being here and having some peace and quiet and looking around at the beautiful landscape would actually help heal the mind.
The feeling I get here is Jack must have felt isolated, really, even on a, you know, volunteered to be, but he chose to bring himself here, so he must have felt pretty bad. I can now feel I know him a bit, and I can see another part of me there. It's a very strange feeling because it's all in the past, but it's amazing how he's come to life, and what you feel for someone that's been dead that long that you never knew.